Hi, everyone. It's Joey Johnston on behalf of Siegel Speakers, and our guest today is Bill Goldstein, who is a lawyer turned sports executive turned observationalist. This guy looks at life and will give you some great opinions and some great takes on what's going on in our modern world. Now, he has worked for the NBA. He's worked for Madison Square Garden. He knows a lot about a lot of things. And he is one heck of a storyteller, and you can find that out by listening to his podcast, which is Not That You Asked, and you can stream it on Spotify and iTunes. And if you want to know more about him, you can log on to billgoldstein.com. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, Joey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Bill, obviously, the coronavirus is a huge topic of conversation, COVID-19, what it's done to the world, what it's done to our country, and what it's done to the world of sports. You being a former sports executive, I know you've got some feelings about this. We don't have pro sports, we don't have college sports, and we're not sure when they're going to come back. What do you think is ahead for pro and college sports in the months ahead? What is going to happen with the virus taking hold like it has?
Well, of course, no one can be accurate in any kind of prediction, but I think what's ahead is frustration and a testing of patience. I think that, I don't think that the NBA and the NHL are coming back. I don't even know if they're still suspended or whether they've actually copped to the idea that the season's over. But I think it is over. I don't think Major League Baseball will have a season. And I'm dubious about the NFL. What people need to remember here is that there's competing pressures. We've got pressure from everybody to get the supply back up, to get everything open, and that pressure is going to mount because the economic hardship mounts. But what has to really happen is not only does supply have to be there, but demand has to be there. And I don't know how fast people are going to be jumping into indoor arenas or even outdoor arenas with 70,000 people in them, and tailgating and congregating in general. I was reading the other day that after the Spanish flu in 1918, no one's going to want to hear this, but it took the country until 1922 until people were comfortable in groups again. And I think that, we're going to see a lot of that. No one's talking about it now. No one's talking about what we're going to do after. We're just trying to get there. And where we are on that spectrum, there are experts who opine every day and give us their point of view. And some are talking much longer and some are more optimistic. Who knows? But sports and group activity in general, I think, is a long way from normal. And if I was in charge of one of these sports, I'd be preparing for quite a hiatus, because I think that's what there's going to be.
Can pro and college sports exist for a lengthy period of time without fans in the stands? Can that work?
I don't think so. I mean, it'd be fascinating to see what happened, but, sometimes you get the most honest reaction the first instant of a question, and you'll all recall, I think, what LeBron James had to say when they asked him about playing in an empty arena. And in about a nanosecond, he said, no and hell no. Now, he reversed himself later when people said, no, you can't say that yet. But I don't know. I mean, it's virgin territory. We've never seen anything like that happen. Are the athletes going to compete? I mean, I suppose, look, they compete in the gym. They compete during practice. So I think they can compete. But it's about the economics of it. I mean, I suppose if this is the way the TV money is restored or maintained, if the television people say, we don't care whether there's fans in the audience, the public will understand that. we need to get programming. We need content. You guys got to play. If you don't play, you're not going to get paid. If you don't get paid, you're going to be in a world of harm. Well, maybe they'll do it. It'll be weird. It'll sure be weird. And you won't see many crowd shots. Those camera angles will all change. And I know something about that. You know, you can control the look of the event and who's there, you know, by controlling those camera angles. And I can tell you, I study those camera angles long and hard before every event that I put on to make sure that I got my sponsor banners in. Oh no, let's move it 6 feet this way so we get the full logo. And we would do that. We would place the banners based upon the camera angles. So you can believe if there's events with no can, I don't know, what, they're going to pipe in sound? I don't think so. That's going to, anyway, it's, who knows? Who knows? If the TV folks want it, and if they suspend payments, if they don't get it, well, then you might see it. Then you might see it.
If you could put back on your sports marketing hat, if you were in the offices of one of these professional teams or leagues, and you're considering television, you're considering sponsorship money, you're considering fans, what are you most concerned about here with the economics of this whole thing to make it work? What's the biggest issue right now that they're fearing?
Cash flow. You know, I mean, how are they going to pay these athletes? Do the contracts? I don't believe the contracts have anything in there for, you know, for acts of God. This would surely be in such a legal category, and many contracts have, except for an act of God. But I don't think so. I think the athletes get paid. I think revenue disappears. That's a generalized statement, but revenue disappears, and you know, you better have some fat backers who can sustain a year of hurt, because that's what they're looking at. All that fan revenue. I mean, what is a sponsor going to continue to pay? I mean, I ran a sports agency where I put on events myself, dependent upon selling sponsorships, and then I represented corporations and purchased sponsorships for them in your golf event or your tennis event or your symphony orchestra or whatever the event was that matched up to the demographics of the client. And Sports Etc. I mean, if I was still running Sports Etc. with my partner, you know, I think we'd be dead in the water. Our events would shrivel. We couldn't sell any tickets. We couldn't sell any sponsorships. And our sponsors, our clients would say, you know what, that retainer for next month won't be arriving on time because everything you're supposed to execute for us has been canceled. So what are you going to do to earn that retainer? You're going to tell us you're going to do some research for us as to what's the best thing when this all comes back? Okay, that's worth about 5% of your retainer. Next. I mean, you know, we'd be crying, you know, we'd be thinking, you know, well, maybe this is the time to retire. You know, I mean, if it wasn't 20 years ago, if it was a couple of 3 years ago, I think that's what would have happened. So, and you know, and be a terrible time to be in the event business. I mean, a terrible time to be in any business. There's nothing really that unique about it, other than the fact that we require, you know, of course, crowds. You know, I mean, there's no event without a crowd. You're saying, well, maybe so, and not you, but it's being hypothesized, and you know, maybe that'll be tried. But the stuff that I was doing, you know, you're not going to get a symphony orchestra to play, you know, in front of an empty hall. I mean, you know, I just observed here this morning that at least locally, I don't know what's going on where you both are, but up until yesterday, you could play golf. Can't do that anymore either. Now, talk about social distancing. I mean, you know, it ain't exactly crowd. I mean, apart from a PGA event, you know what I mean? There's no crowds on a golf course. But they don't even want you walking close to your playing partners. So, you know, it's tough time, and you know, I would be communicating as much as I possibly could with every patron, every customer, every sponsor, anything that had anything to do with my business, I'd be wanting to talk to them as often and as intimately as I could. But I'd have a lot of company. I mean, as we've all noticed, our inboxes are flooded with any organization that we're a part of, trying to stay alive with online stuff, which I suppose we'd be cranking up old tapes and old this and old that, and trying to push it out there as content and trying to maintain a steady dialogue with the people that we're going to need down the road. But as I said, everybody is doing that out here I'm on the East End in Long Island in the Hamptons, where I live full time. And every arts organization out here sends me an email every day, with content and suggested this and suggested that, and every library out here. I love libraries. All right, with your digital books, but I like libraries and I like books, and I support the libraries out here, and they're good. There's a lot of excellent libraries out here, and they're communicating every single day, which was not their pattern before, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. So, I mean, I'm sure if I was in business today, every day somebody would come into the office with another idea. Let's do this. Let's try this. Let's figure out that. We'd be desperate to try to stay pertinent, and we'd be throwing mud at the wall 10 times a day, hoping something stuck. So, and I think that's what you're seeing kind of across the board.
Bill, we hear a lot about how sports can heal. There's been some analogies to 9/11 and when baseball came back, how that helped the country. And there's a lot of talk about how people need sports at a time like this, how much they'd rally around it. And obviously we've got a lot on our minds these days. What to you is the importance of sports in this country, and could it have a role in healing and getting people back to normalcy? Does it have that kind of cachet?
I think it does, yeah. Absolutely. If you were fashioning an equation as to what are the most valuable components to make certain are going to bring this country back to life, you'd certainly include events. Let's widen it beyond the sports, but sports would certainly be the biggest player there. Yeah, no, I think it has a lot of potential, a lot of importance, and I don't diminish it at all. I just think that it's going to be the last of the Mohegans, maybe, to get back up because of the definition of congregating a lot of people, and people are going to have to be comfortable. They're going to now. I mean, I worry about this and talk about 1922. On the other hand. And this fascinated me just the other day. I mean, I'm still surprised about this, and that is the Wisconsin election, which was on Tuesday. Now, today is Friday, April the 10th. Tuesday, whatever the date was, a few days ago, there was an election in Wisconsin, both a presidential primary but the whole slew of local elections. And they were back and forth. Is the election on? Is it off? The governor called it off. The courts put it back on. There was a lot of partisan stuff back and forth. Forget the partisan stuff. At the end of the day, the election was held. Okay? And people knew that by 3 o'clock the previous afternoon, that the election was going to happen. So that means, now I volunteer out here as an election inspector. When there are elections out here. This election out here was scheduled for April. It was postponed weeks ago. I wouldn't go to work as an election inspector now. I just probably wouldn't. Now, maybe that's unpatriotic, and, people want to shame me about that, but I'm in the age group that's vulnerable, and I wouldn't go looking for it. And I would be furious if the election was held, that people prioritize their partisan politics over my well-being. But my instincts were wrong. Now, I don't know what the turnout was like But I do know that they held an election and that people lined up for hours. In fact, they went from like 140 voting sites to 3. That's how few they thought they could staff, 3 in the whole state. And, or maybe it was Milwaukee was 3 instead of 140. I may have but it was down from 140 to 3 in some particular venue. So there were crowds. They were distancing 6 feet as best they could. They mostly had on masks. Of course, I wasn't there, but I saw the shots. But they waited for hours, the voters. Now, I must say, I'm impressed. I mean, to me, that's something. I mean, yeah, do your civic duty, vote, okay. But, geez, in good times, half the population doesn't vote. When you're vulnerable physically and you do it anyway, boy, I'll tell you, that was impressive. So maybe, therefore, people would come back to NFL stadiums sooner than I suppose. Maybe the 1922 analogy won't hold. 100 years is a long time, you know? So I don't know. But I was certainly impressed with what happened in Wisconsin. And I think that whole thing of absentee ballots and how that's going to be handled and how the Republicans see it and how the Democrats see it is going to be quite a seesaw here. The courts are going to get involved, and it could, you know, be quite important because in general, don't shoot me, but in general, I think the thinking is that Republicans would like to limit it. The Dems want it elongated, longer absentee ballot times, blah, 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 because for them turnout is more important. The Republicans actually tend to get their base out better. The Dems have to work a little harder, but they have a wider trough to draw from. Anyway, it's a big deal, and it could affect November.
All right, let me ask you this. When sports do come back, however long that is, and people are back in stadiums and arenas, again, as a sports marketing person, what do you think will change? How will you have to differently manage or promote events, and what will be different for fans? What will their expectations be as they get back into the normalcy of sports? What will sports be like when they come back?
Well, I mean, if my thesis is correct, my guess that it'll be delayed, well, maybe not a lot will change. I mean, they're not going to be selling every 5th seat. So, I mean, either the crowds are in the seats or they're not. And you know, is that going to change? I mean, you know, I would think there'd be, you know, Purell everywhere. I would think that, you know, they'd pay more attention to hygiene, and I certainly would if it was my event. I'd want to, and I'd advertise that, and I'd promote that, and I'd pull in as many sponsors as I could that were from that industry, and try to give the impression that, not the impression, the reality that we were working at it and trying to keep people safe. But again, you know, the variable is proximity. And, you know, unless you're going to diminish the proximity, I think the underlying problem, you know, is still there. People still think that if you cough on them, you could die. You know, I mean, all the Purell you have around the arena isn't going to mollify that very much. So, but, you know, I suppose we'd be probably have our doors open earlier so people didn't all come at the same time. I don't know. We'd be working at it, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, you know, it's like, you know, what's a pie going to taste like if you eat it with a spoon instead of a fork? You know, it's probably going to taste pretty much the same. You know, so I mean, a rose is a rose. If you're going to stick thousands of people in the same place, you're going to have a hard time convincing them that it's particularly safe. But I think that once they are back, I think it'll be even more important than maybe it was, because people will have missed it. they'll be thirsty. That'll be true for a lot of places. I mean, a lot of us, wouldn't mind going out for a martini this afternoon, but we're not likely to do it. When we're able, that'll be probably a pretty sweet martini.
A lot of people around the country have lost their jobs. They've lost a lot of their income. Do you think that's going to spill over into sports? Will coaches make less money? Will players make less money? Will sponsorships evaporate? Will the economics of the whole model be changed forever?
Well, there'll be people who will be advantaged by suggesting that, who will be busy suggesting it. I can tell you that. I mean, again, I mean, what's happened in the interim will have somehow been decided. But if there's diminished anything, there'll be an argument to diminish what you pay for it. And there'll be fights over anything that bears on that. I think it's pretty predictable. Although right now, again, if I was in the commissioner's office of any one of these sports, I'd be trying to get ahead of all that. I'd be asking smart guys like you, the best journalists in the country, to anticipate the issues that you think might be pertinent to the public and to the players and to anybody. And I'd be working like a dog on those things right now to try to prepare ourselves. But I think that and people will be broke, So the corporations who are spending $5 million a year on a package, are underwater now. Some of them. Are they going to even consider sponsorships for the next 5 years? That was the last to be included in a marketing plan when this whole industry started. Event marketing and sports and event sponsorships. We were, of course, we were new. This is in the 70s and the 60s, in the, and we were fighting for share. When I would be selling a sponsorship, whether I was going to an advertising agency or directly to the corporation, we'd be trying to access budgets. They'd be what we call P&A budgets, promotion and advertising budgets, not charitable budgets. And we'd be trying to get our share of it. And so some things were considered, untouchable. At the time, early on, of course, it was television, and to impact that piece of the pie was hard. So we're going to get your money without getting them to enlarge their budgets. Those were the efforts that we were making. Well, now, when we're coming back, now Corporation X, doesn't matter how big it is, but assume it's a huge corporation, assume that they've taken a beating, assume that their stock price is halved, or at least down a third, assume that they might have been paying a dividend, now they're not, so they got angry shareholders. I come knocking, the deal is up. Can we talk about a renewal? I mean, I think I get a lot of, Bill, we like you, lose our phone number. I think we would be the first to go, or among the first. Now the untouchable would be the digital stuff. That's not going anywhere. They're spending more on that every year. We're already in a battle with those budgets because, again, they got to find the money somewhere unless they're enlarging the pie. TV and all of the streaming platforms, they're not going anywhere. So, and you pull sponsorships, the ship goes down. I'm sorry, the ship goes down. It wasn't always that way. 40 years ago, it was the receipts from the public that were the dominant X in the equation. Not anymore. And I don't care what event it is. It could be the Kentucky Derby. It could be Wimbledon. Could be anything. You yank those millions, and those equations are in big trouble. So that means that prize money has to come down. Now you're battling with the athletes. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, you've asked you know, in the world of sports, a profound question. What's this going to be like? Not only what's it going to be like in terms of what's going to happen, but how are the parties going to interact and sort this out in a way that there's any coherence and any cooperation. It's going to be wild.
The cornerstones of sports that we think about, the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Kentucky Derby, Wimbledon, could they be changed in some way? Could they be compromised? These are events that have stood the test of time for half a century or more, and people come to them. They don't have to seek people out.
Well,
so has that changed?
You know, the biggies will do better than those who are less big. Is IBM going to cut out their sponsorship to the Super Bowl? If maybe even the next Super Bowl doesn't take place. So now there hasn't been a Super Bowl for a year even, potentially. Now one comes around, everything's clear. No, the Super Bowl is going to get its money. It's probably going to get even more money. But that doesn't mean that, everybody else isn't going to suffer. So I think the big guys, will do better. But I think they'll pay. Yes, I think they'll pay. I think there'll be economic consequences. And I think that they're already figuring out how to unwind some of these contracts with these athletes. They're already working on their insurance policies. They're already, talking to the player associations and the agents. And, look, people talk, I'm a lawyer, yeah? And people spend a lot of time negotiating their contracts, right? And I've spent a lot of hours doing just that, fighting over language. And I want to change in paragraph 11E. And you go back and forth, drafts. Finally, the damn thing is signed, right? Okay. Any good contract, the test of any good contract, in my view, and any good relationship, is you put that contract in the drawer and you never look at it again. And now, Joey, you and I have a deal, whatever it is, okay? But circumstances have changed, and you come to me and you say, Bill, I know that the contract says this, but it's not working for me anymore. And I need some adjustments, and what do you say? What I say is, what do you need? And let's talk about it. That's what I say. So a good contract breathes, it changes with circumstances. People who do business, who understand that the best way to do business with anybody is to consider them your partner. Your partner. That would be true in any time, certainly in times of war. So yeah, you've got to sit down and I got to make you content on some level. And, I got to remind you that the next time I could be calling you looking for an adjustment. Or down the road, we got to try to make up for this, Joey, because, you're telling me to take a haircut and you know what I mean? It's not so easy. I got bills to pay too, but I want to continue this relationship. And if it isn't viable for you, it won't continue. And then we're going to be what? Suing each other? No. You know how many lawsuits I've been in? I've been a lawyer since the early 70s. Zero. Zero. I never been sued. I never sued anybody. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of contracts. And many of them have been adjusted down the road. As necessary. Sometimes my request, sometimes the other side. So I think there'll be a lot of that now. These contracts where they guaranteed $200 million to athletes. I mean, sorry, the money ain't going to be there. And these owners, billionaires all, they're suffering too. And their money comes from elsewhere. So, what's going on elsewhere? Well, what's going on elsewhere is trouble. Trouble. So these guys who are billionaires maybe are half billionaires now. and they got risky bets out there that have gone bad by now. So, they're more stable than they were years ago. The owners weren't as wealthy. It wasn't such an elite club. There was a time some 20, 30 years ago, I actually put together a group that was considering buying a franchise. But we would have, if we'd gotten in, of course, it wouldn't have been because of my resources. It would have been because of the partners I had recruited. And we would have maybe just snuck in terms of our financial, size. But now, no, you've got to, you got to have, 10 figures in your assets for them to even talk to you. But I think there'll be a lot of renegotiating. I think there will.
Bill, you've certainly given us a lot to think about as in this brave new world that we're experiencing. He's Bill Goldstein. If you want to hear more from him, if you want him to speak to your group, contact siegelspeakers.com or log on to Bill's website at billgoldstein.com. Bill's got a lot of opinions about a lot of things, and he's got a lot of knowledge. He'd be a great guy to talk about a lot of subjects, as you've seen. Bill is a great storyteller and a great guy to have speak to your group. So we'll hear more from Bill Goldstein later on in our series. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Joey Johnston on behalf of Spiegel Seekers. You've been listening to Bill Goldstein. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right.